And I am going to say hello, welcome to today's Talk About Music. And our very special guest is Emily Bieber-Harris. We've had a whole slew of tenors for the last several weeks, so I thought it was time to balance things out and hear from a soprano. And a sort of a specific topic for the day is what I called How the Sausage is Made. Because as you guys might have seen in these last several months, Emily has been one of our pioneers in this whole virtual game because she happens to be very tech savvy. So I thought, well, let's start there and ask Emily, how come that you know how to do this stuff? Because I expect everybody who's younger than me to know more than I do, but you actually know more than most people. So, and I know your dad is a little bit savvy with these things too. And is that how it came to be that you just know how to do things magically, or is it a special?
Well, it's not so much that I know how to do things. It's that, yes, I mean, having a dad in tech, when I was little growing up, people would ask me what my dad did. And I would be like, it's with computers. I don't know. He actually, now I know as an adult, he was in pre-sales for a data warehousing company, which if that explains to you what he does, you would understand why I said just computers. But he obviously always followed the latest technology and still does. So it would be completely false of me to say that this was all on my own. My dad was one of the first people I knew who started the whole Zoom choir thing, or video choir. Back in March, he wrote up instructions on how to do it and shared it with the Unitarian Universalist Musicians Association, or some group of church choir directors. He also sent it to me because I had been asking, I'd love to know how you're doing all this. Turns out he uses a free video editing program, and he wrote up all kinds of instructions that I just started playing around with, because originally I had asked my sisters if they wanted to sing trios with me, and they said yes, but they each have 3 kids and they don't have as much time as I do right now. So I just started recording with myself because I knew I could do that. It's a lot of playing around, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of Googling.
But you also had some sort of skills, because you're already, before any of this happened, you put recordings on your website, and you sort of had played around with uploading just recital performances to YouTube and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think part of it is you can't really be a modern singer trying to make it in any way unless you are able to try these things. There's such a digital presence. Even when I was coming out of grad school in 2009, they had a thing about like, you got to have a personal brand. You need to have a Facebook page for your singing. You need to have, a Twitter. And it's just like, I mean, really? Okay, like, sure. So I started that then.
Yeah, lots of people don't seem to do it though. So I think you were sort of ahead of the game in that sense, that you had tried playing around with some of those things already.
Yeah, it was low risk, if I put my music out there on the internet, people can just not listen if they want. It's fine.
We're not forcing anyone. So talk to us a little bit about the process. I mean, I've also noticed that you do lots of different things, like very stylistically eclectic. And so how does this just sort of the creative germ comes to you and you decide, this is what I'm going to record next?
Yeah, kind of. Something will get in my head, because I have my parents to thank for that too. I grew up in a household with Peter, Paul and Mary, John Denver and the Muppets, and also, classical recordings. We would listen to Renaissance motets around Christmas. We once performed as a 5-person, my whole family. We did a recorded quintet recorder. So like we had the bass recorder, we had the baritone recorder, the sopranino, which is, nerdy as all get out, but it was awesome. But that's where I get my, I'll listen to anything. I will try to emulate anything, and something will just get in my head and I'll be like, I could probably do that. I mean, I can't do it better than they did, but I can sure just try to do it and see what happens. One of the things I've been focusing on is just not being so worried about perfection and more just enjoying creation for the sake of creation. There's so much going on that's not great that it's kind of important for me to just make stuff, even if it's not successful, even if it's not that good. Like, I just want to make stuff. So I'll get an idea in my head, like Because All Men Are Brothers, which is the Peter, Paul, and Mary trio. And it came into my head right around the election, because of course, you know, the election was a very interesting time. And so I kept thinking about it and kept thinking about it. And I was like, I could just arrange something, you know, I don't have a guitar. I can't accompany myself with a guitar. Well, okay, I have a guitar. I'm very bad at it. So I just decided to record the melody and then just make up things to go with it. And then I ended up with a trio of just me. So yeah, it's just an idea that will not leave me, and then I have to do something about it.
Do you write any of this stuff down as you go along, or do you just harmonize with yourself that you know, record the lead track and then see what works with it?
Well, I did two different methods. When I did Because All Men Are Brothers, I recorded, first I created parts in GarageBand, which is a program that comes with a Mac. And I had never used it before, but I recently got into a podcaster who writes his own music for his stories, and it's all in GarageBand. And I was like, if he can do it, surely I can do it. You know, I who have a master's in music, surely can figure out this program. And it's really not that difficult. So I started playing around with it just to create harmonies and hear how they sound together. I mean, obviously I have a piano, but I'm not an amazing pianist. So I can't sit down and just like plunk out the parts at the speed at which I would want to hear them. So I put all 3 parts into GarageBand, and then to record them, I would just turn the volume way up on the other 2, turn the volume way down on the one I was recording, listen to them, sing along with that part, and then I mushed it all together in Davinci. And then when I did Christmas Dinner, I did something totally different, which is record the melody and then just make up stuff to go with it and just record it. And I didn't write any of that down.
So it sounds like you're experimenting with several different methods to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So do you find that
sorry,
completely different than the sort of more classical stuff, or is that an overall approach?
Yeah, I mean, as a classical singer, you know, we don't get a lot of improvisation experience. And what little we do, we tend to panic. Or maybe that's just me. But I have found, you know, growing up in a very musical family, we were always singing in harmony. My dad, he's not here to hear this, but he'll hear the recording later and he'll know that I told on him that anytime there's music, he will hum along to the bass part. No matter where he is, no matter what he's doing, there will be a bass part that he's humming along with. I learned early on how harmonizations work, not from a theory perspective, but just from a what sounds right perspective. And even when I went to college and learned theory, I was really bad at theory because it's just like what sounds right and what sounds wrong. So I've just been playing around with that. You know, I know there are rules to what you do with harmonization, but to me, I just go with my gut. And like I said, sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does, and it's cool.
Well, it's so interesting what you say about improvisation, because sometimes I also think it's a complete kind of mental block, right? That when you describe, you know, music theory or being asked to improvise in a classical context, that all of a sudden it's this freaky thing where, you know, in a certain respect, it's kind of, you know, you do the same thing, but it's just now all of a sudden there's a label on it that makes it scary, right? And requires some sort of concept of perfection. And I think, you know, certainly for me, I've been saying, you know, I don't know, several months into lockdown, it's just like, well, what can you do? And I think a big part of that is just the perfection syndrome, right? That you're so kind of conditioned to thinking that, well, you can't put out anything that's less than optimal. And so then the answer is you can do nothing. And so if you try to put that aside and just do whatever you can do and just try to be happy with that and say that we're in a weird situation and doing some kind of creative output is better than nothing, even if it doesn't live up to what you would like in an ideal world, because right now it doesn't seem like an ideal world.
Yeah, it's really not. I've had to adjust my expectations for myself. You know, I never thought I was a fabulous singer. I've always thought I'm a pretty darn good singer. And I have adjusted my goal with all of these projects to like the upper echelon of mediocrity. Like, I want to be better than not bad. So I think I've hit the nail on the head. You know, it's like, oh, that's not bad. That's maybe better than that.
I think you will love the goal of being
Thank you.
I
like to set the expectations low and then nail it, you know?
I remember my early experiences with harmony. I had studied piano with my mother from about age 5 or 6. And then when I would sit with her in church, she sang alto. So I would sing the alto part with her. And then as my voice changed, and my dad was a tenor, and so I would sing tenor. And then when I went, there was 4 brothers, all tenors. You know, I just got used to hearing another part, and I would then, and we also would listen. My dad's family were from the Ozarks, but we would hear gospel quartets, and that's a certain, you know, the close harmony. And so my ear became used to hearing different parts. And then ear training in college, of course, ear training was a breeze. And so I like your dad listens for the bass line, well, I listen for the tenor line, or create one if they can't find one. And that, I think that has maybe made me feel more confident, more agile. I'm a good sight reader. And because I like to go exploring, you know, where is that part, that elusive part, or that elusive note?
Yeah.
So that part is fun. I haven't tried any recording. Maybe I should give that a whirl. I don't know. But I'm
You should.
I've been very impressed with the projects that you've done. And so
Thank you. Thanks.
The sound and the result. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that I would absolutely recommend. If you have a computer, just give it a shot, record something, play it back, and sing with it. I mean, that's, I guess, to be fair, that's something I've been doing since I was in like 3rd grade or 4th grade. Wow. I had a little little tape recorder that my parents either gave me or I stole from them. I don't know. But I remember being very young and recording the main line of What Child Is This? Because I really loved the tune. And then I would play it back and sing the alto line and just be like, oh, this is so cool how I can do both things. And now seeing kind of the fruition of that in 2020 and being like, oh yeah, I absolutely can look at what I was doing in 1994 and tie them together. That's pretty cool.
That's my point exactly. You were ahead of the game. You started with 3rd grade and never looked back.
Not once.
Exactly. So talk to us a little bit about the sort of tech side. You mentioned Davinci and all these software things that can be kind of scary.
So I guess one of the things we have going for us right now is cell phones, smartphones specifically, are a huge tool. You can almost do 80% of the work with a smartphone. You can record every part. It's just putting it together that you need some sort of video editing software. Davinci Resolve is what my dad suggested because it's free. And, you know, all of the church choirs in the middle of the pandemic thinking like, how are we going to do this? We're not even getting any money in. Well, Davinci is a great solution because you're not paying for it, but you can still get really good results with it. I was absolutely terrified of it at first because you've seen it. The dashboard is a little intimidating for someone who's never done video editing. But my dad gave me a link to a little tutorial that was like, here's basics, and just Googling everything and finding all kinds of video tutorials has been helpful. The things that I use most, definitely my cell phone for all video, because I don't actually own a video camera at all. And then I use that for audio as well. But I've also started using a little external recorder. This is what I used in grad school to record my lessons and record things to send out to competitions and whatnot. I found that if I record separately and then add video to it later, it's way better because I can look less like I'm scared of the notes. Now that's only something I've done recently because I've recorded a couple opera arias. I just put one up last night, Dearest Mama from the Ballad of Baby Doe. And so I recorded the audio, I ripped an accompaniment off of YouTube, and then I recorded video separately. So these were 3 completely separate tracks, and I just uploaded them all to Davinci Resolve and put them together.
So, I mean, that's one of the kind of great secrets of a lot of the stuff that you see, right? That you're not necessarily hearing and seeing the same thing, because most of the time with audio recording, that's what I'm finding with organ. I'm constantly messing around with it because it's not really ideal to record an organ up close ever, because it just, you get a weird balance and you get, clink and clinkety clonk from the keys, that kind of stuff. And especially classical voice is kind of that way too, that you don't necessarily, if you're going to sing something big and operatic, it's better for the recording device to be a little bit farther away from you. But then, of course, our wonderful cell phones, as magical as they are designed to capture your voice when it's right next to it, right? So that's where having a sort of third option for a recording device is a helpful thing. It just occurred to me that maybe I should share, because I think I have a Davinci file open here somewhere, and I can show everybody what we're talking about. Speaking of how the sausage is made, and then you can comment a little bit, Emily, on what we're looking at here. So this is one of the carols for coming up for Lessons in Carols in a few weeks. So right now you can see me on screen, and let's see, where are you? You're in here somewhere.
Yeah, you just had me. I'm right above you.
There you are. Yes. So you see, so
Standing
we
right
start
there.
everybody in their own room with their little cell phone or whatever device so you see we have all the various choir members in there. Some have their Christmas tree to get in the mood for recording. And so we start with everybody recording themselves. They send it all to me. And then I import them all into this page. And then on this next page, I create a timeline where I pull all these videos down so they land. If I open up a different one, you can see what that looks like, because this one I didn't start on yet. So let me grab another one so you can see what that looks. This is a little How a Rose that I did yesterday. So of course, all of this takes a lot of time. So this is what the timeline looks like, right? So once I'm in here, I can, well, let's see, it might not play right now. There you go. So essentially, I took all of those the videos that you saw on the previous screen. I put them all in this timeline, all on top of each other, and then I sync them up, and then I crop every person. You can see it a little better on this screen. You can see all the people up here. So I crop and sort of put everybody down to size. Here's Emily up here. And then I sometimes experiment with putting a pretty picture of the church in the background and that kind of stuff. And then I can do audio balance over here. But all of this just to show you what, to demonstrate what Emily was saying, that when you first open this up, it's totally like looking at a spaceship and you have no idea what all of this might be.
There's so many buttons.
It is very daunting when you first started, but I have to credit, without Emily's advice, I would never even have dared getting started on it, because just as she was saying, if you see somebody do it, then you think, well, maybe I can. I shouldn't say that this is impossible. One foot in front of the other.
Exactly.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
What software was that?
So that's called Davinci Resolve.
Oh, that's the one you was talking
about. Yeah, and it comes in a fancy, I don't know what you get for your $300 if you pay for the professional version, but as Emily was saying, this free version, it gets a lot of stuff done. It really comes down to what your computer can handle, because when I first tried it on my office desktop, I would put because video files tend to be enormously large. So when you add 4 of them together, then on my old computer, that was all over, then it wouldn't play back to me anymore. So that's usually where you come up against those technical limitations.
So with the new equipment that the church got, can you do much more larger things, like maybe even a concert?
So that's sort of an interesting thing. And that's what we, Allison and I did this video flute and piano recital last week. And so I'm thinking about what we can start doing in the future, but it's a little bit of a different discussion if you're, and I think that's also what we're thinking about doing for services eventually, to do a live stream. And the reason we can't do a live stream right now is there's no decent internet in the church. But over time, I think the hybrid version might be that we start taping just segments of, but so then it all becomes about timing, but in a funny way, it's kind of simpler for the video editing because you would never have, 17 or 18 different tracks that you were editing to do a video service. You might have 3, and then you can just sort of cross back and forth between the others, kind of like what Allison did with the video we did last week. All right, questions for Emily about all of this stuff?
Emily, how do you synchronize? Do you have an earphone on with listening to your first track when you're doing the second track to make sure that you breathe exactly the same and any retards or whatever are exact?
Yeah. When I'm doing my non-opera stuff, I do have usually an accompaniment or accompaniment with my other voices. When I was doing the Christmas dinner one, I just kept recording with the headphones in. So I would listen to what I had so far, sing on top of it, take that audio recording, throw it into Davinci, then play Davinci back, and then sing again, and then throw that into Davinci. So I just kept adding things to it while I was listening to it. When I do the opera stuff, I've been playing it on a computer, and then I just remove the audio from the video version because I'm just singing along with myself. But that way, because I'm singing along with myself, it's pretty good lip syncing, I think, for the most part.
Well, that's one of the many things I've found fascinating about this whole new world is sort of there are a whole different set of mechanics about music that you realize through this whole process. And I think one of them is what is easy, what is hard in terms of coordinating. And sort of the first thing that struck me is, goodness, we all just adjust so much to each other when we're in the same room. And I think a big part of it is actually kind of physicality. It's not so much hearing and seeing, but being with somebody physically in a room and knowing how their body is moving. It's not really so much that you're maybe focused on the conductor's exact movement, but just that experience of being together. And that's what, and you really hear the difference when people have to recreate that kind of out of thin air, or with a click track, or with an organ accompaniment, or with a piano accompaniment. It's a very different animal all of a sudden. And that's where it's what I find fascinating about your stuff. And when, like when Dan Perry records with himself, I find it, and this is what pop singers have known this for a long time, right? Because lots of pop singers tend to harmonize with themselves in their recordings, right? They don't hire a gang of other people because they realize that you blend very well with yourself typically, and also that you have the inherent same sensibility. So you're gonna breathe in the same way, in the same place, much more easily with yourself than trying to adjust to somebody else. But for this Christmas stuff, we've done a couple of things. Emily did a lead track on a little Bach lullaby that'll be in Lessons and Carols. And I found that it seems much easier for people to actually have the vocal track to relate to, right? Because then you can match vowels and cutoffs and breathing and all that stuff much more easily than you can with a different instrument. And also there's only you on screen. So I think it just takes a lot of the distractions away. So I'm gonna play around with that some more. Ray, another question?
Question. When you record the times when you have recorded several singers for a service or for the Fourier Requiem, for example, they were talking about clapping a few times to set the tempo. But now, while they're recording their individual tracks, what do they have to keep them exactly on beat? They can't take rubato or things like that on their own. Yeah. So how do you keep that together?
So I think a big part of this discussion is, I would say 80 to 90% of repertoire doesn't work terribly well to try to do virtually. So sort of from my point of view, picking things that we can do is I look at stuff that has a steady beat, that has something that moves constantly. So as it happens for Ray, it's kind of ideal for that because, like the In Paradisum, you have that little thing going, ba-da-bop, ba-da-bop, ba-da-bop. So there's always something to click for you, right? So that kind of thing, I think, works really as well as anything can for an accompaniment, because it keeps on going. But as you're saying, Ray, it's extremely hard to do much of a ritardando or be very rubato about tempo. The more, that's why they call it a click track, right? And that's why so much, studio recording literally is that, there's either something clicking or there's something, there's a drummer or a bass player or somebody laying down a steady beat for everybody to relate to. But the guys for Christmas did an arrangement of God Rest You Merry Gentlemen that Dan Perry had written, and he created a literal click track, which was fascinating because it had clicks on it. And then there was a MIDI recording for everybody to sing along with. And I was fascinated. I do think that it achieved the goal of keeping everybody, on the click, so to speak. But that recording, I felt to some extent came back less flexible. And that's why I really love the one that Emily did. And there was another one that Brian sang lead on. It's just, and I also think there's a nice human thing about relating to an actual person singing on screen, as opposed to having a machine. But the claps are just for the syncing up of when everybody claps at the beginning of the video, when you go into those timelines that I just showed you on screen, it's much easier to see where they start, because when they start singing, especially if they don't all start in the same place, it's a nightmare to try to get them all in line. Whereas if the claps are there, we're all on the same page to start, so to speak.
Yes.
As they're recording their individual lines, are they hearing in their ear? Do they have the one track to synchronize with?
Yeah,
Yes.
you can't do the recording unless you have something.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like Emily has her earphones in now. So, and everybody is different. I watch this all day, every day now. So some people like their big, can earphones, and others prefer to have one earphone in and be able to sort of hear themselves in a natural way in the other ear. And it seems like everybody is slightly different with all that stuff. And some people are very clever about disguising with their hair, their earphones, so you can't see that they're in there. All the tricks.
I was gonna add, if possible, the whole having a click track and making sure everybody's in sync. I have experience with that just with myself. When I recorded the Ubi Caritas quartet, and I just had I found a MIDI version online so I could play each part and sing each part, obviously transposed up a bunch so that I could sing the bass notes. But I did it without a metronome the first time. And even me singing with myself, and you would think that I would have the same mannerisms as each voice part, I couldn't get it together. It was awful. The phrasings were weird. It was very messy. And so I went back in and I added the actual clicks of the metronome, and then it lined up. It was so bizarre to me because it's like, I'm the same person. How is it that I cannot sing it the same way twice? But I couldn't.
Because you're not a robot.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Also, bass Emily is very different from soprano Emily, apparently.
It's a whole different.
Do they have metronomes with just lights and no sound?
That's a great question. And honestly, I would Google it.
Right.
I'm gonna look right now.
Yeah, I mean, I have an old-fashioned metronome that, battery driven, physical, hold in your hand kind of thing, and you can set that to either just blink. And I think I have one on my phone, and I can't say that I ever tried it, but I imagine you can make it just blink at you instead of actually clicking if you ever needed that for a recording project. But I haven't tried
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, they're very ingenious about all these things.
Yeah.
Other questions? Well, in that case, it's 12:30, and I'm going to let you all go about your day. Emily, thank you so much for elucidating us a little bit about.
Thank you. If anyone has any requests, let me know. I'm always looking for a new project.
And you can see all of these recordings.
Enjoy your recordings.
You can find them on Emily's YouTube channel. So just Google Emily Bieber Soprano, and she will pop right up, and you can listen to the Christmas dinner and all that good stuff.
I have 11 people subscribed now.
Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.